From afar, a swarm of locusts appears like a smudge in the sky. Only as it gets closer does it come into focus. The swarms are mesmerizing, and if you stand in one place, they can take hours to pass over you. My name's Max Barak, and I'm the Nairobi bureau chief for the Washington Post. Ethiopia is facing its worst locust outbreak in generations after an uncommon weather pattern in the Indian Ocean caused relentless rains across the region. Travel to the south of the country to a normally dry area with big valleys where people herd cattle and goats. Riding on the wind, locusts would descend into the valleys by the billions. Anyone who's read the Bible knows their potential for destruction. At their worst, a swarm can strip entire farms and even invade grain silos. Locusts are essentially a hormonally charged subspecies of grasshopper. They undergo an almost total transformation when there's enough moisture in the sandy soil of their breeding grounds. They nearly double in size, sprout wings, and a few weeks later, they take flight, in unison.
Kan dura argitanii jirtanii awwaanis
agar
gaafasi uumamii dhageessise
gaafas ageessis gaafas leboon dhufe horii dura marra baddan waan cuf baddan gartee anami armaan ciruu jirna cin kora fixe buna dho so dhani bon tok dhufe baqa fixe inni nu du gaafas agan ingau.
In northern Ethiopia in 1954, locusts devoured nearly 100% of the plant cover, and together with a drought, caused a year-long famine. Locusts are cold-blooded and get their energy to fly from the sun. The first swarms traveled to eastern Africa over the Red Sea from Yemen last June and July. This year's crisis is to some degree related to climate change, which is driving this unusually rainy season in East Africa. But to an even larger degree, the crisis is driven by the inability of governments in Somalia and Yemen, where the locusts breed, which have been weakened by years of war. So once the locusts leave those breeding grounds and become swarms, countries like Ethiopia and Kenya have a much harder time killing them. It's a serious situation in which a humanitarian crisis is already predicted to emerge. But experts say the only solution, really, is to kill all the locusts. And that's an inexact process that requires a lot of things to come together at once. Ethiopia, for instance, has just 3 operational crop dusting planes to spray insecticides. The planes have to take off early in the morning when locusts are on the ground and immobile, but frequent rain and fog often prevents the planes from taking off. By the time pilots reach the swarms, the locusts are already in the air, spread out over miles and miles. I met with 2 South African pilots who've been contracted by the Ethiopian government to run spraying flights. Their plane usually comes back covered in locust guts, and they have to clean out the air intake of the collected locusts regularly.
We try to control the species from the crops field, particularly the crops field, and our government also provide the chemical as well as the aircrafts. Now we have got around more than 8,000 liters chemical from our factory. We have one plant at Adami Tullu, at Central Ethiopian Rift Valley. We have got this Ethiomalata and 95% ULV chemicals to control these pests.
The governments of Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia, as well as the United Nations, have asked for tens of millions of dollars from international donors to ramp up efforts to eliminate the locusts. Even with the money, locust swarms are expected to be around until at least June, when the rains are predicted to end, if not through the end of 2020.